My guess would be there's maybe 10 people. I don't
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
I know there's usually a few um, that are from out of state or whatever. We have, maybe close to 10 people. I
Okay.
don't know if that's the maximum or the
Yeah.
minimum or what, but it's a guess.
Yeah. Well, we
So,
appreciate your energies and efforts to keep us connected.
well, we plan to keep doing that because we're having fun with it for sure.
Good. Well, we really appreciate it. It's very valuable. I went through a program with Kaiser Permanente down here in Southern California. And, the program was excellent, but the follow-up has not been real good. And we haven't had, really an opportunity to get supported by the people that led the class. And the two of you are just phenomenal, in the support that you give and the time that you give and letting us ask the questions, and just the repetition over and over again just really drills it in. So we appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for those words. So
They really
any new people in this class? You haven't been here before, and if you are, if you could unmute and just tell us, hey, I found out about the classes because my doctor sent me or one of my friends sent me. There may be a couple new names, but I can't remember everybody who's been here before. So if you care to share, it would be nice. Now's a good
Sure, I'm
time.
Jeannie. Oh,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Jeannie.
Sorry, Charlie.
Go ahead, Jeannie.
It's been a while since I've been here. I'm not really new. I live in Sutherland, and I usually go to the UC Veg group in Roseburg. So
Well,
I was looking forward to the topic. So I thought, well, I'll set my alarm so I don't miss you all tonight. And here I am.
Well, welcome. Does my heart good having been down in Roseburg and started classes down there and having you attend the class up here. And welcome.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All you need to do is unmute or raise your hand or whatever you'd like to do and say hello.
I just wondered how do you like raise your electronic hand? I can't find it.
You go down to the bottom of where it says mute and stop video, and then there's more. If you click on more, there's like three little dots above it.
Right.
And then in the more, there should be maybe not. Let's see.
See, on my end, it shows down at the bottom, there's a reactions, and you can click on
Oh,
reactions, and then there's a raise hand, and
yeah.
then there's clap and thumbs up, and
There you
I
go.
have a reactions.
Okay, so that's what it is. It's reactions.
Does it stop after a while, or do you have to click it again?
Click it again and it'll stop.
Okay.
Okay, we're learning how to use Zoom. Thanks for the question, Lynn. Others will probably benefit from that. Anybody else care to chime in, say hello, or ask a question or whatever it is before we get started on the GI issues?
I started cardiac rehab yesterday and did it again today and feeling great. So it's just going well. And I've lost about 8 pounds just doing vegan whole foods that I needed to lose. So things are looking good.
Lynn, what kind of foods were you eating before that you have kind of let drop to the wayside for right now?
Well, I always went back to vegan whole foods, but I had slid this winter into just cheese and bread and too much stuff like that. And then in Glacier, what precipitated my heart attack was likely there was nothing but greasy beef junk with deep fried tater tots. So I had a Philly cheese sandwich with deep fried tater tots the night before. Thought it was indigestion. It was a heart attack. So, so I'm basically, I just thought I could get away with it. And late night eating, I was eating like right before I go to bed, and I'm a late nighter anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've stopped that, or if I still find it, it's so light out till late. I still sometimes eat late, but I'll just have a salad with like no 0 calorie dressing or something. So
Mm-hmm.
so that's worked out pretty well.
Great. Sounds like you're doing pretty well at this point, though. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts, suggestions, comments?
I could show the book recommendation for GI issues on the website if you want, real quick.
That would be great.
Oh, I guess you got to
Do
make
you
me
have to be made
co-host.
a host?
Yeah,
Okay, let me do that then. Make host. Yeah.
it's a little bit more challenging on this
A little bit.
platform
We'll
than the
just
old
have to
way.
get used to it, you know?
Yeah, so you can see my screen, I'm assuming there.
Yep.
Okay, so then here's the livelifestylemedicine.com, the class website. Here's the homepage.
Everybody
So
know how to
for
get to the class site, I hope. If you don't, ask us.
livelifestylemedicine.com.
Okay.
Yeah, there's that. And then if you're new to the website, I recommend everyone goes about 2/3 the way down the home page here and watch the website tutorial right here. About a 15-minute video of me giving a full tour of the website, how to navigate around and find all the resources available. So check that out if you're new to the website. And then I'll just go to resources. Let's click on the resources tab. And I just want to go to the books. Got links to books here. And Charlie and I don't have any financial ties to any of the books or anything that's on the website. I just want to go down to the different books for the different classes and get down to the one for tonight, gastrointestinal topics, and right here, Fiber Fuel by Dr. Will Bulsiewicz. And you can link to it right here to get it on Amazon, or there's also available on audiobook and other ways. Libraries a lot of times has it as well, but this is one that if you have any of these GI issues we're talking about tonight, definitely check out this book. We highly recommend it. Stop share.
Okay, and you're going to make me a host or the host back. So while we're waiting, anybody have any other comments that they want to share? We stop for a moment and we just want to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to chime in. If they had something good happen, they had something bad happen, they had just a question. And then after we deal with that, then we'll get on with tonight's a little bit of movie night. We have some couple people to share with you in a couple video clips. I think you'll enjoy them. I do every time I listen to them. I've been listening to them for quite some time, and I hope you enjoy them also.
And I was able to.
Why you
Okay,
can't
go
just
ahead,
be
Lynn.
co-hosts. I'm wondering why you can't just be co-hosts.
We could under my old program.
Oh,
But
What I
this,
was able to do, Charlie, is when I clicked on share screen, the up arrow, it was on one participant can share at a time, but now I selected multiple participants can share simultaneously. So that
okay.
should work.
All right, sounds good. Thanks for guiding us along. We'll figure this out eventually.
Quick question. I missed
Go ahead, Alice.
last week, and when do you post the talk, like by Thursday, or like when does it upload to the website?
Usually by the next day, Wednesday or Thursday. So it's on there now. Last week's is. So you
Well,
just go to the home page and here it is, right? under the website tutorial, this week's class recording, The Magic of Fiber, July 2nd, right here.
Okay. Well, I watched last year's because I didn't find it. So I watched last year's and it was all the same bunch and nobody's aged. Like, oh, there's the whole group from last year. They're all the loyal.
So the latest class is always on the homepage, and then check out my tutorial if you haven't yet, because then you can also go to class archives.
I think
under
I went down to class archives.
And if you just click on complete class archives right here, and then here's the link for the class archives here, and then you click videos. So this is on home screen, but you can click videos, and then it goes in reverse order. So here's the one from last week, and then the week before, and it goes all the way back. There's all the way back several years, so just in reverse order. So
like about 150 classes almost. We do about 50 a year for
Wow.
3 years.
So the beginning of this year was basically right here, my introduction class, and that was beginning of January, and then Charlie's introduction class. So that was the start of this year, and then all the way up to last week right there.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe I didn't find it, but I'll find now. I know.
Yeah, just watch the tutorial.
Okay.
I lead you through it slowly on the tutorial.
Got it.
I love the comment about how many people are repeat offenders here or repeat returners. Yeah, it is kind of heartwarming to see how people keep logging on week after week, month after month, without having to buy anything, without us, selling anything other than we try to sell information and enthusiasm and support. And people like a support group, I think, is the bottom line here. That's ultimately what we have become. And it feels good. It's inspiring to us. And, people who come to these classes seem to get benefit from it. So that makes us feel really good. Doug, Heavy. Unmute. He's still on mute. There you go.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. This from Esselstyn. I think I still remember what he said. Something about brushing your teeth is bad. Is it with fluoride toothpaste, or it destroys the bacteria on your tongue and doesn't initiate some digestion? And I think my dentist would disagree with that.
Yeah, so I've had to confront that and have had my ambiguities about what to do and what not to do. The fluoride apparently does destroy some of the bacteria in your mouth. I don't think you're going to destroy them all. And so maybe you don't get quite as much nitric oxide produced that Dr. Esselstyn would like. I can't stand having grubby teeth, so I still brush them, and regardless of the fact that maybe I'm not having the max benefit from the nitric oxide. But I think, I don't know if that's more theory. I don't know how much that's been tested or able to be tested as to, how much nitric oxide. Scott, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think Gregor has an opinion on it. He's more just to avoid the mouthwashes. I think the like Listerine, I think the mouthwashes destroy more of the bacteria that create the nitric oxide than just brushing your teeth. So I think that's kind of where he would stand, is just don't use the mouthwashes, but you can go ahead and brush your teeth.
Yeah, so I'm following that. No mouthwash, floss and brush.
Yeah, they tell you you're supposed to eat a lot of onion and garlic.
Yeah, so there was a recent article. If you don't like garlic mouth or onion mouth, Dr. Gregor just came out with a video, or maybe two, this last month. If you do a kind of a search on his site for garlic and breath or whatever it might be, you'll see what he recommends to reduce that. I can't remember what it was. I don't know, Scott, do you know? Peppermint or whatever?
Yeah, basil, mint, yeah.
Basil, mint.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grow both of those, so I guess
okay, you're in good shape. And besides, people would rather have you healthy than have good breath.
Well, I'm not so sure about that.
All right,
Obviously, I want him healthy.
that's great. Any other comments from anyone? Are we good for a moment? Okay, we're going to get back to more comments, but we got to take 10 minutes out and listen to Neil Barnard, I think is what he pronounces it. Barnard. I don't know. Scott, what is it? Bernard or Barnard?
It's Barnard. B-A-R-N-A-R-D.
Okay, there we go. It is Barnard. I concur. And we're going to see what he has to say. And then we're going to take a little break time, see if you have any questions. And then we're going to listen to Alan Desmond, a GI specialist. Now, Neil Barnard is not a GI specialist, but he has a fun way of presenting things. And so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to optimize. I can't optimize my video clip, but I can share the sound. So if there's a problem with the video clip, let me know, Scott.
Okay.
All right, here we go. We're going to find it here somewhere, right here.
Today we're going to talk about our digestive tract. You know, there is probably no part of the body that is as affected by foods as our digestive tract because it's really the beachhead. It's where foods occur first. So let's take a look from the top all the way down to the bottom of how foods can affect us. First thing, gastroesophageal reflux, GERD, heartburn. That's when the stomach, which has acid in it, is allowing that acid to go up back into the esophagus, so you feel this burning sensation back behind your chest. Well, what causes it? We don't really know what causes it for everybody, but here are the most common suspects. Having extra weight, meaty diets, and other fatty foods. For some folks, it might be caffeine or alcohol. Peppermint is an interesting one. It actually loosens up that muscle at the top of the stomach, allowing the acid to come through. For some folks, it might be chocolate. But what we see a lot of the time is when people lose weight and when they go on low-fat vegan diets, for whatever reason, their GERD often cleans up. Irritable bowel. Irritable bowel syndrome is where your digestive tract really isn't your friend anymore. One day it's constipation, the next day it might be diarrhea. It really can't make its mind up. And you have pain with it and you have bloating with it. Well, one of the most common contributors to this can be milk products. Milk contains a sugar called lactose. And have you heard of lactose intolerance? It's a totally normal condition. All it means is that you're not a baby anymore, so you don't have the enzymes anymore for digesting milk. And this is actually the biological norm. What I mean by that is if you were to test adults all around the world, most of them have lactose intolerance. They no longer have the enzymes for digesting milk. So the lactase enzyme breaks the lactose into two smaller sugars, glucose and galactose, and once that enzyme is gone, you're stuck with this big load of lactose going down into your intestinal tract. Bacteria ferment it, they make gas, and that's a big cause of irritable bowel. Solution, leave the milk and dairy products off your plate. Very easy. Now there are some other contributors too, not just dairy products. For some people, artificial sweeteners, if they're using a lot of them, can irritate their digestive tract. Fatty foods can as well. When fat touches the intestinal wall, it causes the muscles to contract a little bit, and sometimes it's a little bit like squeezing a tube of toothpaste on both ends at the same time. Ouch. Some people might have a problem with wheat, some with eggs. Peppermint oil might actually help because in this case, it relaxes the muscles of the digestive tract. Now, even more serious, Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. These are inflammatory conditions. If you could look at the intestinal tract, it looks angry. It's red and it's inflamed, and sometimes it earns you a trip to the operating room. Well, see your doctor if you have these conditions by all means, but be conservative. If you don't have to have surgery, by all means put it off. And doctors are now looking at diet changes that might help. We're seeing this especially with Crohn's disease. For some reason, many people do very well when they get away from dairy products. High fiber foods used to be forbidden for people. Now we know that they're the best thing for you. So that means well-cooked beans and vegetables and fruits, whole grains. You might want to go easy on the raw vegetables and fruits if you're having trouble with them. Let's talk about gallstones. Gallstones can be really painful, but there's a lot we can do with our diet to improve things. The liver makes something called bile. It's a digestive juice. It helps us to break apart the foods that we're eating. The liver takes this bile, it sends it into the gallbladder where it's stored, and then after you eat a meal, it goes down the common bile duct and it goes into the intestinal tract to help us digest food. But sometimes this bile starts to crystallize. It's like it's forming little nuggets right in the gallbladder or elsewhere in that biliary tree. This is the pancreas, and you can see right there on the left-hand side there is a spot where a gallstone perhaps could form. Ouch, you don't want that. Well, if you could look at them under a microscope, what you discover is they're mostly made of cholesterol. So the solution to gallstones, surprisingly enough, is very much like the solution for heart problems. We want to lower our cholesterol. That means reducing the fat in our diet, especially the animal fat. Get that out of the diet. Increasing high fiber foods. That's whole grains and beans and vegetables and fruits. And losing weight in a healthful way is really important too. Now, sometimes when people lose weight really too fast by starving themselves, sometimes gallstones can actually form. So what you want to do is to follow a low-fat, plant-based diet, and the weight loss is healthy and gradual. Let's talk about colon cancer. It's a serious condition, and it's particularly common in westernized countries. Why would that be? Well, it turns out that it's strongly linked to a meat-based diet. If you compare people who rarely have meat to men or women who have meat more or less every day, those who have it about every day have roughly 3 times the risk of developing colon cancer compared to people who don't eat meat or eat it only very rarely. Well, why would that be? Why would meat lead to colon cancer? Well, first of all, fatty foods actually change your intestinal bacteria. Did you know that you have bacteria in your intestine? That's perfectly normal. But if you feed them a fatty diet, it's a funny way to think about it, but that's what we're doing, those bacteria actually change. They become the kind of bacteria that can produce carcinogens from your own digestive juices. So you don't want to be feeding a lot of fatty foods to them. That means getting away from the meat. Secondly, you need fiber in your diet, but meat doesn't have any fiber. It's not from a plant, so it doesn't have plant roughage. And if you don't have fiber in your diet, what happens to your digestion? It slows down. And if it slows down, then anything that's there, any carcinogen, cancer-causing chemical, that might be working its way down your digestive tract, it stays there that much longer. And that's not good. So we want fiber in our diet. And third, cooking can produce some cancer-causing chemicals, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But you really want to bring back the fiber, and let me remind you of these numbers. We've talked about this before, but a typical serving of beans, about 7 grams of fiber, vegetables about 4, a typical fruit like an apple or an orange, maybe about 3 grams, bread, a little bit lower, a little bit higher depending on the type, cold cereals, roughly 3 grams per serving, oatmeal, about 4. Earlier I said that cooking can be a problem. A lot of people are getting away from fried chicken. That's a good choice. You'll skip a lot of fat. But some of them are switching to grilled chicken. And killjoy that I am, I have to say, I went and tested what's in grilled chicken. You know those black grill lines that you see? Well, it turns out when you send a little bit of that material to a lab and ask what's in it, they come back with something called FIP. Here it is. This will not be on the test, but this is the chemical structure of FIP. It's a carcinogen. That is, it's a cancer-causing chemical. How is it produced? When you grill skeletal muscle, I'm talking about the muscle of an animal. It could be a fish, it could be a chicken, or it could be beef. When it's cooked at that high grilling temperature, these carcinogens form. My team went to McDonald's. We went to Applebee's and Burger King and Chick-fil-A, Chili's, Outback, and TGI Fridays, and we took their grilled chicken sandwiches and grilled chicken salads. We sent them to a laboratory, and you know what? We found this FIP carcinogen in every single sample at every single one of these restaurants. So it's a reliable thing. If you want to avoid these carcinogens, the answer is pick something other than that grilled chicken. By the way, if you grilled vegetables, these cancer-causing chemicals don't form. It's formed when you heat up muscle tissue, that's meat, at a very high temperature. We've got more good news when it comes to colon cancer. Not only can we make diet changes to help prevent it, it turns out that a person who has been already diagnosed with colon cancer, if they make diet changes, they go to a plant-based diet, a high-fiber diet, it improves the odds of survival. And let me get even a little bit more personal, if I may. Let's talk about hemorrhoids. Years ago, a wonderful researcher named Dr. Dennis Burkitt started looking at why certain conditions are really common in Europe and America, but rare in Africa and other countries. And what he found is that if you're not eating fiber, well, what happens? You get constipated, but people spend a lot of time in the bathroom because they're constipated. And if that happens, then they start pushing extra hard. Are you with me? Well, if you're pushing hard because a person's trying to go to the bathroom, what happens is the blood vessels of the lower part of the abdomen start engorging with blood, and that's the cause of hemorrhoids. And you know what? The most grateful letters that I get from people are not from people where their diabetes went away or we've cured their cholesterol problem, but when their hemorrhoids went away, I got to tell you, that's one grateful person. Similarly, at the top part of the abdomen, your stomach is up there, and when a person is pushing really hard in the bathroom, their stomach can actually lift up through the diaphragm. That causes what we call a hiatal hernia, and that's caused a heartburn. So very simple. Bring the fiber back in the diet. There's no more constipation. Going to the bathroom is an easy thing, and it's not a big issue anymore, okay? So we've talked about problems from the top to the bottom, and it's easy. A low-fat vegan diet, keeping the oils out of the diet, bringing the high-fiber foods in, that's going to really help your digestive tract and make you feel better too. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share there. I love the fact that he talks at the junior high, high school level. Anybody can understand what he has to say. It's not, there were a few words in there like FIP and whatever it might be, but all in all, I hope that was very understandable, even though it may be basic for some of you in this room. And do you have any questions about anything that he had to say? Because the brief summary is, what's the brief summary? Milk and dairy. What's one of the biggest problems that you get with those? Did you hear the lactose intolerance? You know, when you're a little kid, you have the enzymes potentially to break down lactose, but as you get older, you may lose those, and about 3/4 of the world's population doesn't have that enzyme, and so that leads to a lot of bowel GI problems. And so rather than encouraging people to stop dairy, what do we do? When you go to the doctor, what do you get? Another pill. What's the purple pill is one of the biggest ones. You know, and now you can get it over the counter. So you have this problem, which is oftentimes an easy fix, not for everybody, but for many, many people, and wind up taking pills that they wouldn't have to take if they just changed their diet. Any thoughts on that? Anybody had any problem and all of a sudden it was cured because they got off of dairy? There's a hand up. Doug and Abby.
Yeah, I was raising my hand for something else, testimonial regarding chocolate and wine. I read dark chocolate and red wine's good for you. So around 9 o'clock at night, I started having a little red wine and dark chocolate. And coincidentally, I started getting GERD, and I didn't recognize the association until I read that could be problematic after about, 5 months, and I'd scares. About an hour, maybe after I'd fall asleep, I'd wake up with this horrible coughing, gagging, my wife says. And when I read that could be a problematic, I stopped having my red wine and dark chocolate, and the GERD went away.
Thanks for the testimonial. You know, we used to tell people red wine was okay. We no longer really tell them that that's a healthy food. Okay, Trouty. Go ahead and unmute yourself and fire away.
I used to eat a lot of meat, and especially I lived in Alaska, and I thought all this stuff was good for me. It keeps me warm, but I found out it was not good for me. And now I'm on the plant food diet, and there's no more problems with constipation or anything like that. And I make a big plate, and I get 4 different vegetables on it, put it in the microwave I cook them ahead of time, put them in the freezer, then put them out on the plate, put it in the microwave, have some squash for dessert and some apple for dessert, and I have plenty of fiber, and I have no more problems with it.
So Trouty, when you first started taking these classes a couple years ago, this was kind of not an easy transition for you. You came to the classes, you had a lot of questions. It was like, boy, this is kind of hard. And what about this and that? And now you're like teaching the class. So you do our heart good. Congratulations. Kudos to you. It seems like it's so much easier for you, and we're happy for your success.
It's an easy thing, but when I eat out, that's when I make a difference. But it doesn't change nothing. My system is already used to it because I take it 2-3 times a day, and that's it doesn't offset that if I eat out one time. So it's not a problem. But I don't eat a steak or very little. If I have any chicken, very little of it. I just don't eat plant food, animal food. So yeah.
Now that you mentioned the word chicken, let's do a little bit of review of what he had to say about chicken. What is found in grilled chicken?
Carcinogens.
Yeah, and one of them he calls FIP, or heterocyclic amine. And these are cancer causing chemicals that any meat that is grilled or cooked on high temperatures produces these heterocyclic amines. As it turns out, you don't get very many of those if you're cooking vegetables on the grill. So you don't have to throw your barbecue away, but be careful about what you're actually cooking on it. So that's that issue. Gallstones, anybody surprised about cholesterol and being a potential problem with forming gallstones? If you've had gallbladder disease, you probably are interested in this. And then colon cancer. Did you all get that about fiber? What fiber does to lower colon cancer risk? Because for every 10 grams of fiber you add to your diet, 10 grams, how much is 10 grams? It's a serving of beans or lentils and a serving of fruit or vegetable. One or the other, like lentils plus vegetable or fruit. And that's about 10 grams. And for every 10 grams that you add into your diet from what you're doing now, you'll reduce your colon cancer risk by about 10%. You also reduce your heart attack risk by 10%, your breast cancer risk by about 8%. And so why is it in the colon? Because the toxic chemicals that are in there get sped through. They get pushed through more quickly. They don't have time to sit against the wall of the colon. You all get that? Okay, I see heads nodding. I'm good. Now, I'm going to stop for questions. I've talked enough. Questions or answers? Anybody? Okay, quiet group tonight. Okay, Joan.
I was glad that he clarified that it's a muscle that is that FIP. So when you see the black lines on your barbecued vegetables, you don't have to worry.
Yes. Okay, good point. All right. So that's our first video. We're going to the next video. And I think you'll like Alan Desmond if you've never heard him before. Before we get to him, Marcia, you have a question?
I do. I'm not sure, but here recently he was talking about when you have to push to poop. I read that it's kind of off subject, that can also cause varicose veins.
What causes varicose veins?
Varicose. If you
that can increase it as well. Anything that increases the pressure, but also lifting heavy things can cause them too, because you're increasing the pressure inside your abdomen basically. So then all that venous blood flow as it's trying to drain backs up. And so then anytime you get veins that engorge, then you're more predisposed to varicose veins. And of course the hemorrhoids are just the varicose vein of the rectum. So that is true.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna carry on next to Alan Desmond. Now, he is a GI specialist. He's over in England, and he's a world-renowned kind of guy. You'll see him on the internet and other places, and he talks up what in my mind, Gregor, Barnard, McDougall, kind of. Yeah, I guess you'll just get to hear him. You don't need to listen to me anymore. I love listening to him. He's young, enthusiastic, and I find him fun to listen to. Here we go. It's Alan Desmond, Gut Health.
Great, thanks Shireen. And thanks to everyone who managed to find the room. So it took me about 45 minutes. So well done, everyone. Lofty question there for a gastroenterologist. Can a plant-based diet change your world? So I'm a medical doctor. I work at Torbay Hospital. I've got a small private clinic as well. I went to medical school in Cork, in University College Cork, and practiced medicine there. I graduated medical school in 2001. So I'm very much a conventional and mainstream medical doctor. So a part of this talk is about where are we with that now in 2019. Over a century ago, Thomas Edison predicted that the doctor of the future would actually give no medicine, but would instruct his patients in the care of the human frame, in diet, and in the cause and prevention of disease. I think he'd already recognized in the early 20th century that lifestyle medicine and unlocking lifestyle medicine might be the key to keeping people healthy and helping them to stay healthy. Unfortunately, over a century later, as physicians, we have completely missed the mark on that. To the point that in this opinion piece in the Journal of the American Medical Association, Journal of Medical Ethics, it's a mouthful, last year, David Katz made this statement in a kind of a rallying call to doctors around the world to sort of wake up to the need for more diet and lifestyle advice as part of conventional medicine. And it's sad but true, but the food that we eat now is now the main determinant of poor health in the Western world. So food, as he says, has undergone a truly dramatic transformation from essential sustenance into the single leading contributor to chronic disease and premature death. So can a plant-based diet change your world? So I'm going to talk mostly about my own areas of expertise, which are about gut health, health and longevity, asking, can a plant-based diet help you to avoid long-term disease and long-term medication? And then I'm going to address some of the other questions that may not be my areas of expertise, but they always come up, and I hear people talking and asking about them a lot. Could you somehow be leaner or maybe even more athletic on a plant-based diet? Can you tread more softly on our planet? And can a plant-based diet help you to exercise compassion? But before we do all that, let's come back into my clinic. So the reason that I advocate and recommend a whole food plant-based diet isn't because I went to medical school and I was a vegan at medical school. The opposite may be true, actually. But really, it was my patients who brought me to a whole food plant-based diet. So one of the things that I spend a lot of my time treating, even since I I think as a very newly qualified doctor back in 2002. So for the last 17 years, on a day-to-day basis, I've been involved in treating people with a condition called inflammatory bowel disease. Now, these are a group of conditions, these inflammatory bowel diseases, where sections of your bowel become inflamed and damaged and dysfunctional. We have medications that can help to reduce the inflammation, but very seldom get people into complete remission. For example, with Crohn's disease, which is about half the cases of inflammatory bowel disease, half of the patients who are diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease are going to end up having surgery to remove part of their bowel, basically to remove a diseased part of their bowel because it's not functioning anymore. Almost all of our patients with inflammatory bowel disease end up on long-term medication, And being diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease is no fun. Most people with inflammatory bowel disease would describe their health as being below good. And the rates of work absenteeism and school absenteeism are very high. And in fact, the inflammatory bowel diseases are diagnosed at a median age of about 30. So these are usually young people in the prime of their lives. They're working, they've got mortgages, they've got young kids, and now they're being told that they've got to come to the doctor's office every 3 months. And there's a good chance they're going to end up on some medication that means they're going to have to come up to a day ward every 8 or 12 weeks and sit in a room that looks a bit like a chemotherapy day unit, to be honest, and go on a drip and have medication to keep their inflammation under control. Now, when I was at medical school, we were taught that inflammatory bowel disease was kind of the paradigm of an autoimmune condition. You've gotten unlucky in the genetic lottery. There's something wrong with your immune system, so it's attacking your guts. So that's it, you're stuck with it, and we've got some medication that can help. But in fact, the more I've looked at it, the more I've realized, and mainstream gastroenterology is moving this way, that there's a lot you can do with diet and lifestyle. So your future is not set in stone when it was coming to inflammatory bowel disease. And whenever I would see or have or meet a patient who's been just diagnosed with one of these conditions, they'd already figured out that there was something to do with food here. So I've heard people asking the same question since my first day on the GI unit back in 2002. Okay, so I've been diagnosed with this, you've explained all that stuff to me. Is there anything I can do with food? And they don't mean, is there any food I should eat today to feel better or worse? What they mean is there any food I should be avoiding that can help me prevent that progression you've just described with more and more medication and increasing likelihoods of having surgery? In medicine, we're all about trying to give our patients evidence-based answers. So we'll only give our patients advice or a medication if we can look at medical studies that show us that they work. So that's a big stack of medical journals there to illustrate the fact that I've read loads of medical journals. Because over the years, particularly since becoming a consultant in 2012 and more recently the lead for treatment of inflammatory bowel disease at my hospital, I've been trawling through the mainstream medical literature so I could give my patients evidence-based answers. And I guess what I learned was there's a lot of very strong evidence out there, lots of stuff about inflammatory bowel disease that I never learned at medical school. So I learned that IBD is not just a genetic disease. There are a lot of various factors in the etiology of inflammatory bowel disease. And there's a huge amount of evidence that diet is extremely important, both in the cause of and the progress of inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel disease didn't really exist as an entity in the early 20th century, but now it affects 1 in 300 people in Europe. Perhaps 1 in 200 people in the UK now has inflammatory bowel disease. You probably all know someone who has ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease. When we look at the epidemiological data, there's very, very clear story that as countries industrialize their environment and industrialize their food chain, these diseases start to come up and start to get diagnosed. We saw it in Europe and the United States and Australia in the post-war years, and then more recently as countries like Japan and Egypt, etc., have westernized their lifestyles and westernized their diets, they're starting to see these diagnoses appearing. In fact, the Lancet Medical Journal a couple of years ago highlighted this issue in a huge editorial piece and just warned us that inflammatory bowel disease is actually a slow epidemic. In a few years, we're not going to have the resources to treat all these patients. And when we zoom in on the dietary risk factors, there's really compelling evidence that shows that dietary fiber, just the fiber that you get from eating plants and whole grains and vegetables, actually strongly protects you from developing inflammatory bowel disease. And there's strong evidence that eating the animal protein, so the more animal protein you eat in your diet, the more likely you are to develop inflammatory bowel disease. There's plenty of studies showing that dairy fat can induce inflammatory bowel disease. And there's some really, really interesting research that we could have spent the whole day on today on the effects of animal-based diet on the gut microbiome. So we've seen studies where you take people and you put them on a very animal product-heavy diet, and their gut microbiome changes into a pro-inflammatory gut microbiome, which is actually capable of inducing inflammatory bowel disease. And there have been so many studies showing that food additives that we get in processed foods, like emulsifiers, polysorbate, maltodextrin, carrageenan, the evidence showing that these food additives are so pro-inflammatory in the intestine, particularly in patients with inflammatory bowel disease, that a few years ago a team of researchers wrote to the Journal of Crohn's and Colitis and said, we've cracked it. Emulsifiers are causing Crohn's disease. They called it the emulsifier hypothesis of Crohn's disease. But in a way they were right, but it's a much bigger story than that. So over the years, because I would go and look at all these various studies from disparate sources, these epidemiological studies, lab studies, dietary intervention studies, I slowly came up with this green list and this red list. So when my patients say to me, is there anything I should eat? Is there anything I should avoid? I would came to the point where I would say to them, well, look, I'd prefer if you totally cut out processed foods and really avoided animal protein and animal fat and dairy. And I want you to avoid, in particular, food emulsifiers that are found in a lot of processed foods. And I want you to avoid the food additives that are found in a lot of processed foods. And I want you to build your diet around whole, unprocessed foods, fruits, vegetables, legumes, walnuts, flax seeds, beans and seeds, and whole grains. So before I even knew what a whole food plant-based diet was, I was already recommending to my patients that a whole food plant-based diet is really what the evidence tells us. If you want evidence-based answers, there's your evidence-based answer. Eat a whole food plant-based diet. It's impossible to read all that research about Crohn's and colitis without reading a lot more research about the effect of diet on the diseases and disorders that I see in my clinic every day, that we see on our hospital wards every day, or in our GP's offices, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't go through all of these, but it turns out that a whole food plant-based diet seems to tick all the right boxes for long-term gut health, whichever of these conditions you're looking for. So diverticular disease is a condition whereby you get these little pouches in the side of your bowel, predominantly your large bowel. They can get clogged up, they get infected. Your gut gets inflamed around the pouches. You can get stricturing. You can end up having a perforation or an abscess. You can end up in hospital. You can even have part of your bowel removed due to diverticular disease. Now, gladly, most people with diverticular disease don't end up seriously unwell, but they do have bothersome symptoms and it reduces their quality of life. We've known since the 1970s, when Dennis Burkitt was writing about his experience as a surgeon working in London and working in rural Africa, that among populations who eat a whole food plant-based diet, particularly a high fiber diet, nobody gets diverticular disease. Yet diverticular disease affects about 80% of 80-year-olds here in the UK, about 30% of 30-year-olds. And in fact, in the US, you can almost call it ubiquitous. If you live long enough in the United States, you're probably going to get diverticular disease. And if you have diverticular disease, and if you look at the studies showing, well, what are the characteristics of your diet that predict running into trouble with your diverticular disease? It's high meat and low fiber are going to run you into trouble. I'm just going to talk a little bit about colon cancer. Unfortunately, in my job, I sit down with people all the time and I tell them that I've just diagnosed them with colon cancer. So I might do that once, twice, or 3 times per week. Now, that's always a very difficult conversation, and I'm very aware that that person's going to remember that conversation forever, and it's going to change their life forever. Even if they do really, really well, it's going to change their life forever. So what about a whole food plant-based diet and colon cancer? Well, we know, even Cancer Research UK, who would be relatively conservative in their estimates, would estimate that 55% of cases of colon cancer in the UK are due to 3 factors, one of 3 factors: low fiber diet, red and processed meat consumption, and being overweight or obese. Just those 3 things. So 55% of the 42,000 cases of colon cancer that occur in the UK every year are entirely preventable by diet and lifestyle. And I haven't even mentioned alcohol and smoking. Just food we eat and physical exercise and maintaining a healthy body weight could dramatically reduce the numbers of patients who have that difficult conversation with somebody like me every year. Just at the end there, NASH cirrhosis. So NASH is non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, or fatty liver disease, or foie gras liver, if you want. So this is a condition whereby you have fat deposited on your liver. Your liver doesn't like having fat deposited on it, which causes the liver to be inflamed. And about 10% of people with NASH, that condition, will end up developing cirrhosis of the liver in about 8 or 9 years. That's without touching a drop of alcohol. It's completely separate to alcohol or other chronic diseases of the liver. Having cirrhosis of the liver reduces your life expectancy. So it's surprising that this condition that wasn't even described in the medical literature 50 or 60 years ago now affects 20 to 30% of people in the UK. So we have an absolute epidemic of NASH cirrhosis. And when we look at the dietary risk factors for developing NASH and putting yourself at risk at NASH cirrhosis, it's the more animal products you consume and the more processed foods and free sugars that you consume. What's the antidote to that? Whole food, plant-based. We're seeing NASH cirrhosis all the time in our hospital wards now. And essentially what we're seeing, and I can think of maybe 2 or 3 episodes of this already this year, is we'll sometimes get, for example, you saw an elderly person who's been admitted to hospital with pneumonia or a urinary tract infection or some sort of infection that can be serious enough when you're old, but usually people get better from, and they've been in hospital for 2 or 3 days, and then they go yellow because they've become jaundiced, and then they become encephalopathic and drowsy, and then they go into a coma. And then we have to sit down with their family and say, well, actually, you know, your mum's dying now. She's got liver failure. And they say, well, why is that? So the scans show that she has cirrhosis of the liver. They say, well, she never drank a drop in her life. We say, we know. This is NASH cirrhosis. We're seeing it more and more. So as a gastroenterologist, I recommend a whole food plant-based diet rather than a Western diet. For the same reason that my friends who are orthopedic surgeons tell their patients not to go skiing, because they've seen the harm that it can do. And I see the harm that a standard Western diet does every day of the week. So that.
Okay, we're gonna stop there. And if anybody is interested, it's on YouTube. It's Alan Desmond, and it's a gut health, how a plant-based diet, something or the other. I have the full title somewhere, but you can pick that up or look at it at some point. He had a lot of good things to say. He covered a lot of topics, and maybe some of those were important to you. Maybe some of them you've never heard of before. But I think that you kind of got the message. I hope you did. Occasionally he uses the word vegan, but mostly he used whole food plant-based. And so we've been over this before, and most of you know that just eating vegan may not be healthy because Oreo cookies, French fries dripping in oil are vegan, but they're not foods as grown in nature. Whole foods, plant-based is what we are encouraging you all to consider to reduce the disease burden, not only in your gut, but he goes on further now. He talks about the blue zones. He talks about the cardiovascular reversal and the other kinds of illnesses which are not GI related, in case you're interested. Any questions, any thoughts on this? And were you surprised by him discussing food emulsifiers and additives? No. Okay. I wasn't surprised. Go ahead. Yolanda, you're just raising your hand, or you want to unmute? Go ahead.
So I was surprised about the emulsifiers, and I was just about to Google it to see what exactly that was. Can you elaborate, or I can just look it up?
Well, he mentioned carrageenan, which is in some milks that I've,
Is that a thickener?
I believe so. I'm not sure exactly what emulsifier means. So if you want to look it up and share that with us, we're good with that.
Okay.
Anybody else smart in the room that knows about emulsifier and the definition? Yeah, go ahead, Janet.
Emulsifiers have the ability to combine oily with watery and have them stay combined. That's when you make like a really great salad.
We can't hear.
Okay, a little bit louder if you could speak into your microphone.
I have a problem with my microphone. Sorry. Emulsifiers will help watery liquids and oily liquids combine and stay together.
Okay, so watery and oil, it helps them bind together. Thanks for that bit of knowledge. That's why it's fun to have this group too. They get different thoughts.
I know a lot of preservatives and artificial sweeteners. Their main effect, I believe, is just they mess up the gut microbiome, so they cause dysbiosis, so they kind of injure your healthy gut microbiome. So that's why it's good to try to avoid those things as well.
Go ahead, Yolanda.
So here it says some of the most common emulsifiers in food products include soy lecithin, carrageenan, mono and diglycerides, carbamethylcellulose, and polysorbate.
So when you're looking on the package of these processed foods, you find those sorts of labels. But when you're shopping in the fruit and vegetable department or on the beans and lentils, the whole grains in the bins or wherever, you don't see those names, right? So that's why eating a non-processed or pretty much a very little processed to unprocessed whole plant food diet is the healthiest. Okay, Trouty. Unmute.
In oat milk, are there emulsifiers and these artificial milks? Because I use them for oatmeal and so on. So is that bad for you too? Do I have to use one?
So it's better for you than leche de vaca, than cow's milk products. But is it the healthiest choice? Probably not. Water and tea are probably healthier choices than the processed milks. But some people just like to have that white stuff. I do. But I make my own soy. So I take the soybeans, I put it in the soy Bella machine, which I fill with water, and then just the soybeans, and they get ground up. And my wife says it tastes a little watery, but it looks white. And so that's my soy milk. There are no other preservatives, and it lasts me about, I don't know, 4 to 5 days. I may make it every so often. But for most of us, having a little bit of that is probably not a problem. But let's say you have some autoimmune disorder and you're trying to avoid, you're trying to reverse that, probably avoiding those completely to see if you can reverse your autoimmune disease or whatever you're trying to do. And then if you then become totally symptom free, maybe then reincorporating them if you have the need. But by that time, if you do it for long enough, you probably don't have the need anymore. So I must tell you, when I transitioned, I kind of used some of those emulsifier products and some of the preservatives in the plant-based milks. But I've kind of tried to get away from that best I could. Who had their hand up? Jeannie, I think is.
Yeah.
Go ahead. And
yes,
then
I had. Oh, sorry.
Jeannie first.
Yeah, I wanted to say I have found one plant-based soy milk product put out by West Soy, and it's just the soybean milk. There is nothing else to it. And it's their unsweetened soy milk by West Soy.
Okay.
Just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that. And Joan.
Same. I look at the ingredients, and you can buy one that says the ingredients are soy and water. That's it. It doesn't have a list of ingredients you can't pronounce. Just read the labels.
Lynn.
A bit of a preamble. About 15 years ago, my mother was hospitalized over and over for C. difficile and was on almost constant antibiotics for months. And she developed diarrhea and she didn't even want to live anymore. It was so bad. And I researched and found Culturelle, and I actually talked to the president of the company, and that that did save her because the probiotics did something that helped her regain her whatever, and she came out of it and lived for several more years. I sort of have a positive thing about Culturelle and probiotics because of that, and I've taken one about twice a week ever since, just because they seem good to me. And the doctor took me off of a lot of stuff and took me off of those, the cardiologist in Montana, in June. So I haven't gone back on yet until I see a cardiologist and ask her about it. But I'm wondering just what your opinion is about probiotics generally.
So my opinion is that if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, you're eating a lot of fruit and vegetables, you're getting healthy bacteria from those fruit and vegetables. You can populate your microbiome by just eating healthy, as long as you don't, sterilize the fruit and vegetables that you're eating, like dipping them in alcohol or hydrogen peroxide or something like that. You're going to be getting bacteria, and that you don't necessarily need to spend extra money on probiotics. That's my first thought. C. difficile is a really difficult illness sometimes, and modern medical therapy is potentially fecal transplant. So that's bacteria that come from a microbiome of a healthy person, and sounds much more palatable than Culturelle or whatever the name is. That
Well, it seems to me to be a good thing when you have to go on antibiotics, but
yeah. So there is a study out of Israel that, Scott, maybe you want to go over with them how they did this study, and they found some surprising results about whether people were placed immediately on probiotics or whether they were left alone. Do you remember that at all?
Yeah, yeah. So it ended up taking longer. It's after you took a course of antibiotics, taking a probiotic actually made it take longer to get your baseline healthier gut flora back. And so it showed that it seemed to colonize the colon wall, and it kind of caused an imbalance. And so we no longer recommend probiotics for people after they take antibiotics. The better, the evidence is stronger for just eating fermented foods. So eating, like hopefully a soy-based yogurt, eating like kimchi or kombucha or sauerkraut, tempeh, miso, all those fermented products actually showed to do better to get your gut flora back. And then, like Dr. Will Bolsowitz, the gastroenterologist in the Fiber Fuel book, he does still use probiotics at times as a tool to kind of help people that have really injured guts, to help bring them back. So there is a place for them. But a lot of it is, like any supplements, you don't know what you're really getting because it's not really FDA regulated. So there's that issue. And then, and the other thing I like to remember too, to tell people is with probiotics, is that I like to use Dr. Greger's analogy about the rabbits in the shed. And so if you think about it this way, so you throw two rabbits, a male and a female rabbit, into a shed, and you throw pork rinds in there. Just keep throwing pork rinds in there. What's going to happen? Well, the two rabbits won't be able to grow and mate, and the two rabbits will die off. But what happens if you throw in carrots? Just keep throwing carrots into the shed. Well, the two rabbits become 4 and 8 and 12 and 16, and they multiply because that's their food. So you're feeding the rabbits their food, and so the healthy microbiome, their food is fiber. And so if you're just eating a standard American diet, Western diet, taking probiotics, you're putting maybe some good bacteria in there. But if you're just keep giving them the low fiber or no fiber diet with lots of meat and dairy and processed foods, you're not giving those good bacteria their food, and so they just die off. And so basically more important is to eat the wide variety of whole plant foods. And like Charlie said, you'll get all the good bacteria from all the different plant foods. And then other things that are good for the microbiome are getting out in nature, petting animals, things like that, and just being not in a sterile environment in our houses and offices, and having a diversity of foods, a diversity of environments and things like that. That's the best way to a healthy gut microbiome.
Thank you.
Great topic. Thank you for bringing that question. And if it's not clear, or you want to bring it up again sometime, other people will benefit from kind of a discussion on this.
It was pretty clear. Culturelle is just one ingredient, Lactobacillus GG. And I was clear on that. So I was okay with that being the only ingredient. So
yeah, it's interesting that your mom got that much success from that. That's great. And so we put that in our memory banks, and if something else doesn't work, we go down the list of what do we remember actually worked. Anybody else have a thought, a suggestion, a question? We're just into the middle of, toward the middle to the end of our fun here. Trouty, go ahead and unmute.
You convinced me that with that artificial milk and whatever, I'm going to cook with water. I use it up what I got right now and switch to water, and it's going to be fine. I do not want to. My mom lived 93 years, and I hope I can live that long. With a diet like that, it's going to be all right, I think.
That's great. That's great. So we'll see if there are any other questions. I don't see anybody's hand up or anything. I'm going to play one more video. It's called How to Develop a Healthy Gut. I'll bet you have a kind of a clue about this, but let's hear what Gregor has to say. I think it's Gregor that we're going to. Where is my... There it is. It's How to Develop a Healthy Gut.
As I've explored before, whether you're young or old, male or female, smoker or non, high blood pressure, low blood pressure, high cholesterol or low, having high levels of a toxic compound called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, in your bloodstream is associated with a significantly higher risk of having a heart attack, stroke, or dying over a 3-year period. Where does TMAO come from? The choline in foods like eggs can be turned by gut bacteria into TMAO, which is then absorbed back into our system, and the more eggs we eat, the higher the levels climb. Given the similarity in structure between carnitine and choline, the same group of Cleveland Clinic researchers wondered if carnitine, found in red meat, energy drinks, and supplements, might also lead to TMAO production, so they put it to the test. If you feed someone a steak, their TMAO levels shoot up. Now, this was someone who regularly ate meat. Those who eat strictly plant-based may start out with almost no TMAO in their system, presumably because they're not eating any meat, eggs, or dairy, But even if the vegan eats a sirloin, almost no TMAO is made. Why? Presumably they don't have steak-eating bacteria in their guts. No TMAO is produced if you don't have TMAO-producing bacteria in your gut. If you don't regularly eat meat, then you're not fostering the growth of the meat-eating microbes that produce TMAO. This suggests that once we develop a plant-based gut ecosystem, our bacteria will not produce TMAO, even if we eat meat every once in a while. However, we still don't know how rapidly gut bacteria shifts after a shift in our diet, but it does not appear to be all or nothing. If you take men eating the standard American diet and have them eat 2 sausage, egg, and cheese biscuits before and after just 5 days of eating lots of high-fat meals like that, you can boost TMAO production even higher. So it's not just do you have the bad bugs or not, you can apparently breed more of them the more you feed them. On the other hand, meat-free diets have been demonstrated to have a profound influence on human metabolism. You can analyze a urine sample and tell what kind of diet people eat based on measurements like how low their TMAO levels are in the urine of those eating egg-free vegetarian diets. You can even take the same people and rotate them through 3 different diets, and you can tell who is who's on a high-meat, low-meat, or no-meat diet, in part based on the different compounds churned out by the different gut flora or different flora activity after just about 2 weeks on the different diets. It's possible that some of the beneficial effects of whole plant foods may be mediated by the effects they have on our gut bacteria. At the same time, the standard American diet may increase the relative abundance of undesirables that produce toxic compounds, including the cardiotoxicant TMAO. Strictly plant-based diets have gained acceptance as a dietary strategy for preventing and managing disease, perhaps in part because of their rather unique gut flora, less of the disease-causing bacteria and more of the protective species. So all along, we thought the reason those eating plant-based had lower heart disease rates was because they were eating less saturated fat and cholesterol, but maybe their lower TMAO levels may also be contributing to their benefits thanks to their reduction of ingestion of carnitine and choline. I talked about the egg industry response to the choline revelation. How has the carnitine supplement industry reacted? Well, the former VP of Advocare, a multi-level marketing company that sells carnitine supplements like Slam, while getting slammed with lawsuits, finding them, for example, guilty of false, misleading, or deceptive practices, forced to pay over $1 million, in response to the research implicating carnitine and TMAO production, he questioned whether there was a secret vegan conspiracy at the Cleveland Clinic, restricting our intake of meat or carnitine supplements to prevent our gut bacteria from making TMAO, he argues, is like trying to prevent car accidents by restricting the sale of fuel. Okay, but there are benefits to transportation. We're talking about TMAO, which may be fueling our epidemic of heart disease, the #1 killer of men and women in this country. As far as I'm concerned, the more we can cut the fuel for that, the better.
Okay, time to stop. Time to answer a few questions on this topic or on any topic that you desire. You know, we want to make these classes for you. We kind of come up with some videos which we think are kind of interesting and engaging, and sometimes we get lucky and sometimes not. Go ahead, Trotty.
I did not get what TMAO is.
Okay, good question. So TMAO is a chemical that's produced by the bacteria. Actually, it's TMA that's produced in your microbiome, trimethylamine.
Uh-huh.
And this trimethylamine is as the, we'll call them bad bacteria in your gut, chew on the meat, dairy, and eggs, they produce this TMA. trimethylamine. It gets into your bloodstream, goes through the liver where it gets converted to TMAO, trimethylamine N oxide. Then it circulates through the bloodstream and it kind of pushes cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol, through the arterial wall, and can lead to what? Plaque formation, which can lead to heart attack and stroke. It also causes an inflammatory response, which leads to an increased rate of cancer. So that's the best explanation I can give for TMAO. It's produced by the bacteria that you populate in your colon, in your microbiome, when you eat meat, dairy, and eggs. If you're eating plant-based foods, you don't populate your colon with the kind of bacteria that produce this chemical. What they produce are the good chemicals of butyrate, which is an anti-inflammatory chemical, which comes back and says you've had enough to eat. And it's also very anti-inflammatory. So eating plant-based diets are non-inflammatory, anti-inflammatory, where the meat-based diets are inflammatory. They cause inflammation. Also, these good bacteria that are eating the fiber, their food, not only they produce butyrate, but they produce serotonin, which is that feel-good hormone, which we give people, or we've been in the past, and most doctors prescribe serotonin reuptake inhibitors for anxiety and depression, probably because there's so little fiber in most people's diets. Go ahead, Jerry.
It seems like sometime in the last year or so, we heard that the people that are coming into our country can change their microbiome in 2 weeks, and that one meal makes a difference as well.
So I've heard you can even change your microbiome from Gregor, I think, in 4 days.
Yeah.
So you can change it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I forgot the second part of that question, Scott.
Just that was probably one of the reasons that people, like, for example, the colon cancer risk of a native African is really low because they're eating a really high fiber diet, where the African Americans, their rate of colon cancer is very high. And so you could take those people from rural Africa, native Africa, and move them to the United States, and pretty quickly they can start to adopt the same colon cancer risk as someone that's been living in the United States their whole entire life, because they're not only is their food changing, but their lifestyle is changing too. But so that contributes as well. But their genetics hasn't changed; it's the same person. So that's a kind of plays into that. Eating the low fiber diet, the Western diet, increases your risk of colon cancer, and the high fiber diet reduces your risk of colon cancer. So and the microbiome plays a role in that. Not to mention all the heterocyclic amines from the meat that we learned about and everything else.
Who else? Any other thoughts? Any other discussion? We're game. Go ahead, Alice. I see you unmuted.
I have a total segue question.
Okay.
Complete. I wanted to get Scott's take on the Tour de France and, like a little commentary. And then I guess the UAE team is like the guy's number one, and that's like a bot team. But I want to hear Scott's take.
I've been following it. I didn't get a chance to watch today's stage, but I looked at the results. It was just a field sprint. So Jesper Philipsen won, but the UAE teams, Tadej Pogacar, and then there's uh, yeah, all the great teams are there. But what as far as my opinion is what, just how the race is going?
Yeah.
Yeah, I follow it. Yeah, I always watch the Netflix documentary from the previous year too, because I find that interesting because it's all the background with all the teams and stuff, all the team dynamics and everything. But I'm an old guy now, so it used to be kind of fun to watch because I used to be able to watch some of the riders that I used to race against because I was never good enough to ride in the tour myself, but I raced against riders that rode in the tour. So I was at just that one notch down where I wasn't quite good enough to ride in the tour, but so those guys are amazing that you have to be on one of the top 10 teams in the world and one of the probably top 150 riders in the world to be able to ride in that race. So pretty exciting.
So we have a local kid from Boise, Mateo Jorgensen.
Yeah.
He's a Boise kid.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, he's really good. He's in that elite group.
Yeah, he's about number 30th, I think. But
yeah, there's different kinds of riders. There's GC riders. There's riders that are just support. There's riders that are just trying to win a stage. There's riders that are sprinters. There's all kinds of different competitions within it. But one people always hear about is the yellow jersey, which is just who has the shortest overall elapsed time for the 3 weeks, and that's the yellow jersey. But there's a lot of races and competitions within the teams and everything. So it's definitely a team sport, not an individual sport.
So the guy who's number one, Tadej, whatever you.
Tadej Pogacar. Yeah.
Where is he from?
Slovenia.
Okay.
Yes, either Slovenia or Slovakia. I think it's Slovenia. Yeah. He's like 25 years old. He's already won it twice.
So we have 4 hands raised up. They may want to comment upon this. I just finished watching 30-30 Lance Armstrong, 4 hours worth. It was on Netflix. It was an interesting documentary. But let me get to Doug, and then Jeannie, then Nancy, then Yolanda, and that'll probably be the end, but we'll see. Doug and Evan.
Another Esselstyn question. He talks about putting a few drops of balsamic vinegar. Is that for flavor or does that do anything?
Actually, Gregor recommends a few teaspoons a day. Or we have incorporated, I think, a tablespoon for breakfast and dinner, not just drops. So I'm not sure exactly what effect it has. Do you recall, Scott?
It's just more, I think the for Esselstyn, I think it's just to make it taste better, just for flavor. But as far as it's good for weight loss, because it stimulates cyclic AMP in the small intestine, which as an appetite suppressant. So it actually has been shown to help with weight loss. Any kind of vinegar, whether it's balsamic vinegar, red wine vinegar, apple cider vinegar. But I think for Esselstyn, it's just for taste, I believe.
I'm trying to gain weight, so I'm not going to do that, I guess.
Okay.
It's okay. It's healthy for you. It's fine. It's not going to make you lose unwanted weight, I don't think. I think it's more for people that are overweight.
Yep. Okay, Jeannie. Owen.
Yes, my question is, my brother who passed from colon cancer, and he was type 2 diabetic also. But 2 months before he was diagnosed with the colon cancer, he told me his A1C was 5.7. And he said it had to have been a mistake. I've been wondering, could that be because when 2 months later is when he was diagnosed, he was stage 4. My thought was that because the cancer was working kind of like an exercise, eating everything up to attack his colon, and that caused the low A1C?
Sounds like as good a theory as any to me.
He likely probably lost weight also with the cancer. Most people, when they diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, they have some unintended weight loss, and with the weight loss would come less insulin resistance and lower blood sugars.
Oh, okay. so I'm not too far off in thinking that it was the cancer that caused that low A1C.
Yeah.
More than likely. Okay.
More than likely, and like Scott says, the weight loss, he lost a lot of fat, and the fat in the muscle cells is what leads to insulin resistance. So as you reduce that, as you continue to lose weight, your diabetes definitely improves.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Nancy.
Yeah, okay, so I had a hiatal hernia operation, I guess it was at the start of COVID when I got it done. And I was asking the doctor what caused it, and he didn't know. I thought maybe it was because, well, I remember when I was pregnant, and I was getting a lot of acid reflux, and then when I got obese, I was having some problems too. And I thought maybe it was because of one of those, but I remember when I was pregnant, I was totally constipated all the time, and so maybe that was the cause. So it was kind of interesting when you said that the hiatal hernia could be caused by constipation. So now maybe I have an answer.
Yeah, so if you increase the pressure within inside your gut, as you're straining down, it can kind of push either downward or upward potentially, and extra adipose or fat tissue can put pressure and push things up, I suspect. I'm not sure exactly how it's deposited.
Just seems like that those doctors should have known. I don't know. It just seems like they could have had some theories for me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
I actually haven't given it much thought myself as to what's the actual cause of a hiatal hernia. It might be you were born with some kind of weakness of the diaphragm. The muscles were a little thinner and allowed the stomach to kind of come up through that area. So there may be some genetics associated with it also.
Yeah, my brother had one too.
Yeah.
So there were four of us, and one of my brothers.
I'm gonna read about it.
So maybe there is some genetic propensity too.
Yolanda. Unmute.
Down here.
There you go.
So this is back to the Tour de France and bringing it back to what we eat. I wondered, Scott, if there are those types of cyclists as those that compete in the Tour de France who are on a vegan diet. You know that movie, The Game Changer? There was a female cyclist who was on a whole food plant-based diet. And I was curious if you knew whether these long distance cyclists are also maybe on this type of eating.
Yeah, I don't know. You're talking about Dotsie Bosch. She was Olympic track cyclist,
Right.
and she was on the
cycling as
plant-based
a 40-year-old.
Right, and that's the Game Changers. But yeah, as far as I mean, all the documentaries I've watched and been around it, the bike racers are really secretive about what they eat. So they likely wouldn't share if they were because it's like so it'd be could potentially be such an advantage. And so, but I would say most of them probably aren't. But the athletes I know more about are just the more mainstream, NFL football players and NBA basketball players that they're more upfront about it. So I know a whole bunch of NFL and NBA basketball players that eat plant-based, and they say it helps with their recovery, less inflammation, all that. So they're more upfront with it. But I haven't really heard too many bike racers whether they are or not.
Okay.
I know. I wish I was. I had a hard time.
Don't we all? I wish I'd started as a 20-something.
Back when I was racing, I struggled to keep my weight down so I could climb the mountains, and I had to starve myself to try to get lean enough to climb the big mountains and the races and stuff. And now if I knew what I know now, I would have probably been a whole nother level better.
You would have been in the Tour de France.
Who knows? I was pretty darn close. I raced in Spain. I raced on a professional team. So
Yeah.
that was pretty high level, just not kind of like when people don't understand bike racing, I equate it to baseball because people understand Major League Baseball. So I was like a
Right.
AAA baseball player, but not quite good enough to go to the major leagues. That's kind of the
Right.
level I was at. So,
It's pretty high.
yeah,
All right, thanks.
you're welcome.
Well, Scott, what's coming up next week?
Pediatric obesity with Dr. Colgrove, pediatrician Eric Colgrove. He's going to be coming up next, and then we'll have a open forum, I think the week after that.
Sounds good. Hope to see you all around again another time. It's been fun and wish you a good week. Thanks for all your participation.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Have a good night.
I won't be here next week. I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Good night.
Take care.